Ivy Thornton found an abandoned baby in the hospital where she worked. She adopted him, named him Theo, and moved to an isolated mountain town seeking a peaceful life. But on her very first morning, black SUVs surrounded her house. Wolves emerged from the trees, circling the property, and a terrifying man with golden eyes appeared at her door. "That baby belongs to my family," he said. Ivy had no idea she had adopted the lost brother of the most powerful alpha in existence. Welcome to the channel. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you listening from today? Now get comfortable because this story will keep you on the edge of your seat. The morning sun painted the mountains of Hollow Creek in shades of gold and amber as Ivy Thornton pulled her old sedan into the driveway of her new home. She turned off the engine and sat in silence for a moment, listening to the gentle breathing of the baby sleeping in the car seat behind her. 8 months. That was how long it had taken to finalize the adoption. 8 months of paperwork, home visits, sleepless nights, and prayers whispered into the darkness. But now, finally, Theo was hers. Legally, officially, forever hers. Ivy stepped out of the car and stretched her tired muscles. The drive from the city had taken 6 hours, but it was worth it. Hollow Creek was everything she had dreamed of, a small town nestled between ancient mountains, surrounded by forests that seemed to whisper secrets to anyone willing to listen. It was the perfect place to start over, the perfect place to raise her son. She opened the back door and carefully unbuckled Theo from his car seat. The baby stirred, his tiny fist reaching up as if searching for something invisible in the air. Ivy pressed a kiss to his forehead. "We're home, little one," she whispered. "This is our new beginning." The house was modest but charming, a 2-story cottage with blue shutters and a wraparound porch. The previous owners had left behind a garden that desperately needed attention, but Ivy didn't mind. She had always wanted to learn how to grow things, to nurture life, to build something lasting. She placed Theo in his portable crib on the porch and began unloading boxes from the car. The moving truck wouldn't arrive until tomorrow, but she had packed enough essentials to get through the first night. Diapers, formula, her grandmother's quilt, and the worn copy of fairy tales she read to Theo every evening. The street was quiet. Too quiet, Ivy realized, as she carried the 3rd box toward the house. She paused and looked around. Curtains moved in the windows of neighboring homes, but no one came out to greet her. No friendly waves, no curious children running across lawns. Just eyes watching from behind glass. A chill ran down her spine, despite the warmth of the autumn sun. "Don't be paranoid," she muttered to herself. "Small towns are always suspicious of newcomers at first. They'll warm up eventually." She had just set down the box and turned back toward the car when the sound of engines shattered the peaceful morning. 3 black SUVs appeared at the end of the street, moving in perfect formation like predators stalking prey. They stopped directly in front of her house, blocking her car, blocking any possible escape. Ivy's heart began to pound. Men in dark suits emerged from the vehicles. 6, 7, 8 of them. They were all tall, all broad-shouldered, all moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost inhuman. They spread out around her property, some standing by the fence, others positioning themselves near the corners of the house. Ivy grabbed Theo from his crib and held him against her chest, her arms wrapping around him like a shield. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. "Who are you people?" The door of the lead SUV opened, and a man stepped out. Ivy had seen attractive men before. She had dated a few, been heartbroken by 1 or 2. But she had never seen anyone like this. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that seemed capable of carrying the weight of the world. His hair was dark, almost black, cut short in a way that emphasized the sharp angles of his jaw. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. but he moved in it like a second skin, every step radiating power and control. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. They were gold, not brown, not hazel. Gold, like molten metal, like the eyes of a predator watching its prey from the shadows. They fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to run and stay frozen in place at the same time. He walked toward her, his men parting to let him pass. "Who are you?" Ivy asked again, hating the slight tremor in her voice. "This is private property. You need to leave." The man stopped 3 feet away from her, close enough that she could smell him, pine and something darker, something wild that she couldn't name. His golden eyes moved from her face to the baby in her arms, and for a moment something flickered in their depths, something raw and desperate and barely contained. "That baby," he said, his voice deep and commanding, a voice used to being obeyed without question. "Where did you get him?" Ivy stepped back instinctively. "He's my son. I adopted him legally. I have all the paperwork." "Where did you get him?" The man's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "He was abandoned," Ivy said, her arms tightening around Theo. "At the hospital where I worked. Someone left him in the emergency room with nothing. No note, no identification, nothing. The police couldn't find any family. I fostered him for 6 months before the adoption was finalized." She lifted her chin. "So whoever you think you are, whatever you think you're doing, you're wrong. Theo is my son, mine." The man's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, those golden eyes searching her face as if looking for a lie. Then, without warning, he moved closer. Ivy didn't retreat this time. She stood her ground, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. "Don't come any closer. I need to see his shoulder," the man said. "His left shoulder." "What?" "No, absolutely not." "There's a birthmark." His voice cracked almost imperceptibly on the word. "A crescent moon. If he has it, then he's—" He stopped, swallowed, started again. "Please, I need to see." Something in his voice, the desperation, the barely hidden pain, made Ivy pause. She looked at him more carefully. Beyond the intimidating exterior, beyond the power and the control, she saw something else. Fear, hope. The same emotions she had felt the first time she held Theo in her arms. "How do you know about the birthmark?" she asked quietly. "Because I have the same one." He pulled aside his collar, revealing the skin of his left shoulder. There, dark against his tan skin, was a crescent moon, identical to the one Theo carried. "It's a family mark, passed down through generations. That baby—" His voice broke completely. "That baby is my brother." The world tilted beneath Ivy's feet. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The police searched. They couldn't find any family." "They wouldn't have known where to look, or who to look for." His golden eyes met hers. "My name is Cade Mercer. 8 months ago, my parents were killed and my infant brother was taken. I've been searching for him ever since." He looked at Theo. And this time, Ivy could see it clearly, the desperate love, the profound relief, the agony of a man who had nearly lost everything. "His name isn't Theo, it's Theodore Mercer, and he belongs with me." Ivy shook her head, clutching Theo tighter. No, you can't just show up and he's my son. I'm the only mother he's ever known. I won't give him up because some stranger claims—" "I can prove it," Cade interrupted. "DNA test, medical records, whatever you need, but I'm not leaving without him." "Then you'll need a court order," Ivy said, her voice hardening. "Because I'm not handing my child over to anyone without proof, real proof, verified by authorities, not just some birthmark and a story." For a moment, something like respect flickered in Cade's golden eyes. His men shifted uneasily, clearly not used to seeing anyone stand up to their leader. "You're either very brave or very foolish," Cade said quietly. "I'm a mother protecting her child. There's nothing braver than that." their eyes locked, gold meeting green. And something strange happened. The air between them seemed to charge, to thicken, to vibrate with an energy Ivy couldn't explain. She felt it in her chest, in her stomach, in the very marrow of her bones. A pull, a recognition, as if some part of her soul had been waiting for this moment without her knowledge. Cade felt it too. She could see it in the way his body went rigid, in the way his pupils dilated, in the sharp intake of breath that escaped his lips. Then he stepped back abruptly, his expression shuttering closed. "A DNA test," he said, his voice suddenly cold, controlled. "We'll do it today. Until the results come back, you'll stay in my home where I can ensure my brother's safety." "Excuse me? This isn't a request, Miss Thornton. I don't care what it is. I'm not going anywhere with you." Cade's jaw tightened. "The people who took my brother, who killed my parents, are still out there. If they discover he's alive, they'll come for him again, and they won't leave witnesses." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I have resources you can't imagine, security you can't provide. If you truly love that child, you'll accept my protection." Ivy's mind raced. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was insane, that she should call the police, that she should slam the door in this stranger's face and never look back. But another part of her, a deeper, more instinctive part, knew that he was telling the truth. She could see it in his eyes. She could feel it in her bones. Theo was in danger, real danger. And this man, whoever he really was, might be the only one who could protect him. She looked down at Theo, still sleeping peacefully in her arms, completely unaware of how his tiny existence had just turned her world upside down. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll come with you, but only until the DNA test results come back. And if you try anything at all, I will find a way to destroy you." Cade's lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "I don't doubt it." He turned to one of his men. "Soren, help Miss Thornton with her essentials. We leave in 10 minutes." The man called Soren, almost as tall as Cade, with kind eyes that seemed at odds with his intimidating build, nodded and moved toward her car. Ivy watched as her new life in Hollow Creek crumbled before it had even begun. She had come here seeking peace, seeking a quiet place to raise her son. Instead, she had found something else entirely. As she climbed into the SUV with Theo in her arms, she caught Cade watching her in the rearview mirror. His golden eyes were unreadable, but she could have sworn she saw something burning in their depths, something that looked almost like fear, not fear of her, fear of something else, something that had awakened the moment their eyes had met. Something that neither of them was ready to face. The SUV pulled away from the cottage with the blue shutters, and Ivy Thornton's ordinary life disappeared behind her like a dream upon waking. She had no idea that the most extraordinary part was just beginning. The Mercer estate sprawled across 200 acres of pristine mountain wilderness, hidden from the main road by a private drive that wound through ancient pines. Iron gates opened automatically as the convoy approached, revealing a mansion that looked like something from another century, all stone walls and towering windows and ivy climbing toward the sky. But it wasn't the mansion that made Ivy's breath catch. It was the people. Dozens of them emerged from various buildings as the SUVs parked, men, women, even children. They gathered in the courtyard, watching the vehicles with an intensity that made Ivy's skin prickle. Some stood on porches, others paused their work to stare. All of them had the same look in their eyes, sharp, aware, predatory. And when Cade stepped out of the SUV, every single one of them lowered their heads in a gesture that looked disturbingly like a bow. "What is this place?" Ivy whispered, clutching Theo closer. Cade opened her door and offered his hand. She ignored it, climbing out on her own. "My home," he said simply, "and now temporarily, yours." Ivy looked around at the watching crowd. A woman with silver hair stood on the mansion's front steps, her posture regal despite her apparent age. Children whispered to each other behind their parents' legs. Men who looked like they could bench-press cars stood with arms crossed, their gazes tracking Ivy's every movement. "Why are they all staring at me?" "Because you're new," Cade said, "and because you have my brother." He began walking toward the mansion, clearly expecting her to follow. Ivy stayed rooted in place. "Mr. Mercer." He stopped and turned, one eyebrow raised. "I need to know what I'm walking into," Ivy said firmly. "All these people, who are they? What is this place really? And why do I feel like I've just stepped into something I can't possibly understand?" Cade studied her for a long moment. The gold of his eyes seemed to shimmer in the sunlight, catching the light in ways that human eyes shouldn't. "Some questions are better answered inside," he finally said, "away from curious ears." "That's not an answer." "No." The ghost of that almost smile returned. "It's not. But it's the best you'll get for now. Come, Miss Thornton, you must be tired from your journey." He resumed walking. This time Ivy followed, though she kept her guard firmly raised. The crowd parted as they passed, and she couldn't help but notice how people's gazes lingered on Theo. Some looked surprised, others looked relieved. One woman, young, with auburn hair and sharp features, looked at Ivy with an expression of pure, undisguised hatred. Ivy filed that observation away for later. The mansion's interior was as impressive as its exterior. High ceilings, polished wood floors, artwork that probably belonged in museums. But there was warmth here too. Comfortable furniture arranged around fireplaces, books stacked on every available surface, the smell of something delicious cooking somewhere in the depths of the house. "Ilara," Cade called out. The silver-haired woman from the steps appeared in a doorway. Up close, Ivy could see that despite her apparent age, there was something timeless about her. Her eyes were the same gold as Cade's, and they fixed on Theo with an emotion so raw that Ivy instinctively took a step back. "Is it true?" the woman whispered. "Is it really him?" "The birthmark matches," Cade said quietly. "DNA will confirm, but—" He nodded. "It's him, grandmother. Theodore is alive." The woman, Ilara, pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Tears spilled down her weathered cheeks. She moved toward Ivy slowly, as if afraid any sudden movement might shatter the moment. "May I?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "May I see him?" Something in the old woman's voice, the grief, the hope, the overwhelming love, broke through Ivy's defenses. Slowly, carefully, she turned Theo so that Ilara could see his sleeping face. Ilara let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "Oh, my boy, my precious boy, you have your mother's nose, your father's chin." She looked at Ivy with gratitude shining in her golden eyes. "You saved him. You saved our Theodore." I found him," Ivy said, uncomfortable with the intensity of the moment. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Ilara shook her head firmly. "Not anyone. You. The universe chose you to find him, to love him, to keep him safe until he could come home." She reached out and touched Ivy's cheek with surprising gentleness. "I see more than most, child, and I see that you are exactly where you are meant to be." Before Ivy could respond, Cade cleared his throat. "Grandmother, perhaps we could save the mystical pronouncements for after Miss Thornton has had a chance to rest. Soren will show her to the guest suite." Ilara's expression shifted to something knowing, almost amused. "Of course, rest, yes." She patted Ivy's hand. "We'll talk more later, dear. There is much you need to understand." Soren appeared at Ivy's elbow, gesturing toward a grand staircase. "This way, please. I've had the staff prepare the suite adjoining the nursery. You'll have everything you need." Ivy allowed herself to be led away. but not before catching one last glimpse of Cade watching her. His expression was carefully neutral, but his hands were clenched at his sides. Whatever had happened between them outside her cottage, that strange electric moment, it was clear he was just as disturbed by it as she was. The guest suite was larger than Ivy's entire apartment back in the city, a sitting room connected to a bedroom, which connected to a private bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. And through a door on the far wall, a nursery that looked like something from a magazine. A hand-carved crib, shelves lined with toys and books, walls painted with murals of forests and mountains and moons. This was prepared for Theodore, Soren explained, his voice gentle. Before he was taken, Mrs. Mercer, Cade's mother, she designed every detail herself. Ivy's throat tightened. She sounds like she was a wonderful mother. She was. Soren's kind eyes clouded with old grief. She would have been grateful to know that Theodore was loved, even when he couldn't be with us. After Soren left, Ivy laid Theo in the beautiful crib and stood watching him sleep. Her mind was a hurricane of questions, fears, and impossible realizations. The birthmark, the matching mark on Cade's shoulder, the way everyone here seemed to move together, think together, like a single organism with many parts. And that moment outside her cottage, that impossible, undeniable pull. "What have we gotten ourselves into?" she whispered to her sleeping son. Theo, as always, offered no answers, just peaceful, perfect sleep. Ivy was about to turn away when movement in the garden below caught her eye. She moved to the window and looked down. Cade stood alone in the courtyard, still as a statue, his face turned toward the sky. As she watched, something impossible happened. His body began to change. It started with his hands, fingers elongating, nails darkening into claws. Then his shoulders broadening, muscle and bone shifting beneath his skin. His spine curved, his clothes tore away, fur erupted across his skin like black water. And then, where a man had stood, there was a wolf. Not a normal wolf. A creature the size of a small horse, with midnight fur and eyes that burned like molten gold. It threw back its massive head and let out a howl that shook the windows, that resonated in Ivy's chest like a second heartbeat. Ivy stumbled back from the window, her hand pressed to her mouth. She had wanted to know what she was walking into. Now she knew. And the knowledge changed everything. Sleep came in fragments, haunted by dreams of wolves running through moonlit forests and golden eyes watching from shadows. When Ivy finally gave up and opened her eyes, pale morning light filtered through the curtains. Theo was already awake, playing quietly in his crib with the soft toy wolf someone had placed there overnight. "That's appropriate," Ivy muttered darkly, lifting him into her arms. She had spent most of the night trying to convince herself that what she'd seen was a hallucination. Exhaustion, stress, the mind playing tricks after a difficult day. But she knew better. Cade Mercer was not human, none of them were. The real question was, what did that make Theo? A knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Ivy considered ignoring it, but the knock came again, more insistent this time. "Ms. Thornton?" A female voice. "Mr. Mercer requests your presence at breakfast." Ivy opened the door to find a young woman holding a garment bag. "I'm Maria," the girl said with a nervous smile. "Mr. Mercer thought you might appreciate some fresh clothes, since yours are still at your cottage." Sure enough, the garment bag contained a simple but beautiful sundress in a soft green that matched Ivy's eyes, along with comfortable undergarments and shoes that fit perfectly. How had they known her size? She decided she didn't want to find out. After dressing herself and Theo, Ivy followed Maria through the mansion's labyrinthine halls to a dining room where a long table had been set for breakfast. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, bacon, enough food to feed an army, or a pack, her mind supplied unhelpfully. Cade sat at the head of the table, dressed in a simple black shirt that did nothing to diminish his overwhelming presence. Soren sat to his right, and Ilara to his left. Several other faces Ivy didn't recognize filled the remaining seats. And at the far end of the table, watching Ivy with that same hateful expression from yesterday, sat the auburn-haired woman. Miss Thornton. Cade rose as she entered, pulling out the chair beside him. Please, join us. Every eye in the room tracked her movement as she sat down. Theo began fussing in her arms, reaching toward the table with grabbing hands. May I? Ilara asked, already rising. I could feed him while you eat. Ivy hesitated, but something about Ilara, some deep, instinctive trust, made her nod. She passed Theo into the old woman's waiting arms and watched as Ilara began feeding him pieces of soft fruit, cooing words in a language Ivy didn't recognize. The DNA results will be back by this afternoon, Cade said, his voice carefully neutral. In the meantime, I thought you might appreciate a formal introduction to my household. Is that what we're calling it? Ivy asked quietly, meeting his golden gaze. Your household? Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. You saw. I saw. The table went silent. The auburn-haired woman straightened in her chair, a smile playing at her lips, as if she'd been waiting for exactly this moment. What you witnessed, Cade said slowly, is a truth that has been protected for generations. My family, my people, we are not like others. You're werewolves. Ertu. The word felt strange on Ivy's tongue, like something from childhood fairy tales suddenly made real. We prefer the term shifters, but yes, we carry within us the ability to transform into wolves. He paused. It is both a gift and a responsibility. We live by strict codes of honor and secrecy. Humans who discover our existence are typically killed. Ivy's voice didn't waver, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Protected, Cade corrected firmly. We are not monsters, Miss Thornton. We have families, jobs, we pay taxes and volunteer at community centers. We simply have additional capabilities. And Theo? Ivy asked, her eyes moving to where Ilara was bouncing the happy baby on her knee. Is he? The gene manifests during adolescence. We won't know for certain until he's older, but yes, he carries the bloodline. Ivy absorbed this information in silence. Her son, her precious, innocent son, might one day transform into a creature from legend. It should have terrified her. Instead, strangely, it made her love him more. I have questions, she said finally. I'm sure you have many. Your parents, the people who took Theo, are they? Cade's expression hardened. There are other packs, other clans. Not all of them share our values. The Blackmore clan has been our enemy for generations. They seek to dominate, to rule through fear and violence. My parents stood against them. His voice roughened. They paid for that stance with their lives. When they came for my parents, they took Theodore as well, a hostage, or perhaps something worse. But how did Theo end up in that hospital? We don't know. Perhaps whoever was transporting him had a change of heart. Perhaps there was an accident. The important thing is that he's safe now. Cade's golden eyes fixed on hers. Thanks to you. The auburn-haired woman made a small sound of derision. When Ivy looked at her, she didn't bother to hide her contempt. Something to add, Dahlia? Cade's voice carried a warning. Dahlia smiled sweetly. I'm simply wondering, Alpha, why a human is being given such intimate access to our secrets. We know nothing about her. She could be anyone, a spy for the Blackmore, perhaps, planted to gain our trust. I'm a nurse, Ivy said flatly. I adopted a baby. I've never even heard of the Blackmore until 30 seconds ago. How convenient. Enough. Ah! Cade's voice cracked like a whip, and Dahlia flinched. Ivy Thornton saved my brother's life. She has earned our gratitude, not our suspicion. Dahlia lowered her eyes, but not before Ivy caught the flash of hatred in them. Whatever this woman's problem was, it clearly ran deeper than suspicion. You called him Alpha, Ivy said, turning back to Cade. What does that mean? It means I lead this pack. Over 200 souls who have placed their trust in me. Their safety, their prosperity, their future, it all rests on my shoulders. He said it without arrogance, simply stating fact. It is a duty I inherited from my father and his father before him. And Theodore? The spare heir, in human terms. If something happens to me without an heir of my own, leadership would pass to him when he comes of age. Ivy's mind raced, connecting dots she hadn't seen before. That's why they took him. Not just as a hostage, they wanted to eliminate your entire bloodline. You're perceptive. This time the almost smile reached his eyes. Yes, with both my parents dead and Theodore in their hands, I would have been the last Mercer standing. And if anything happened to me, the Blackmore would fill the power vacuum. Precisely. The weight of it all settled on Ivy's shoulders. This wasn't just about a baby and a birth certificate. This was about power, politics, generations of conflict between supernatural factions, and somehow, through pure chance and an overwhelming desire to love an abandoned child, she had stumbled directly into the center of it. I need air, she said, rising abruptly. Cade stood with her, concern flickering across his features. I'll escort you to the gardens. Alone. Her voice came out sharper than intended. I need to process this. Alone. For a moment, she thought he would argue. His jaw tightened, his golden eyes darkening with an emotion she couldn't identify. Then he nodded once. Soren will wait outside, for your safety. It was a compromise she could accept. Ivy fled the dining room, aware of every eye following her retreat. She found the gardens behind the mansion, acres of cultivated beauty surrounding a stone fountain. She sank onto a bench and let her head fall into her hands. Werewolves, alphas, ancient blood feuds. Her son, potentially carrying a gene that would transform him into a creature of legend, and Cade Mercer, whose golden eyes haunted her even now. You look like someone who's had their entire worldview shattered. Ivy's head snapped up. A woman stood on the garden path, young, with warm brown skin and kind eyes. She carried a basket of freshly cut flowers over one arm. Sorry, the woman said, smiling apologetically. I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Mira. I take care of the gardens. Ivy. She managed a weak smile. And yes, worldview thoroughly shattered. Mira laughed softly and sat down on the bench beside her. It's overwhelming at first. I remember when I found out. I was 16, and my best friend accidentally shifted during a full moon. I thought I was losing my mind. But you're human. Human as they come, but I grew up in Hollow Creek. My grandmother was a Mercer, married into the family before she knew the truth. She chose to stay, to be part of this world. Mira's eyes softened. Not everyone runs, Ivy. Not everyone is afraid. I'm not afraid, Ivy said, surprising herself with the truth of it. I'm just trying to figure out where I fit in all this. Mira studied her for a long moment. Can I tell you something? Something I probably shouldn't. Ivy nodded slowly. The way Cade looked at you in there, I've never seen him look at anyone like that. And I've known him my whole life. Mira leaned closer. There's something between you two. Something the pack is already whispering about. Something that could change everything. Before Ivy could ask what that meant, Soren appeared at the garden entrance. Miss Thornton, the DNA results are ready. Mr. Mercer requests your presence." Ivy rose on unsteady legs, Mira's words echoing in her mind. Something that could change everything. She had a feeling she was about to find out exactly what that meant. The study smelled of old books and leather. Cade stood behind an enormous oak desk, a manila envelope in his hands. Ilara sat in an armchair by the window, Theo sleeping peacefully in her arms. Ivy's heart clenched at the sight. Her son, so comfortable in the embrace of a woman he'd only just met, as if some part of him recognized her, remembered her. "The results are conclusive," Cade said without preamble. "Theodore Mercer shares 25% of my DNA, consistent with a half-sibling relationship." Half-sibling. The word landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through everything Ivy thought she knew. "Different mothers," Cade continued, as if reading her thoughts. "My father had an affair. It was a source of pain for my family. But my mother, she loved Theodore anyway. From the moment he was born, he was her son too." Ivy sank into a chair. "So it's true. Theo really is Theodore Mercer, heir to the Mercer legacy. My brother." Cade's voice roughened on the last word. "And legally now your son." She looked up sharply. "What? Your adoption papers are legitimate. You went through proper channels, followed every law. I have no intention of dragging this into court, of traumatizing either you or Theodore with a custody battle." He set down the envelope and moved around the desk until he stood before her. "But I also cannot let him go. He is the last connection I have to my parents, the only family I have left." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I would like you to stay." The words seemed to cost him something. "Here, at the estate, Theodore can have the best of both worlds, his biological family and the mother who saved him. We can arrange for your things to be moved from the cottage. You'll want for nothing, and Theodore will grow up knowing exactly who he is." It was a generous offer, a reasonable offer. And yet, "No." Cade's eyebrows rose. "No? I won't be kept like some kind of live-in nanny. I won't have Theo grow up watching me fade into the background while his real family raises him." Ivy stood, her chin lifting defiantly. "If I stay, and I haven't decided yet, I stay as Theo's mother, not as an employee, not as a convenience, his mother, which means I make decisions about his welfare, his education, his future." "You're making demands." "I'm setting boundaries, something you could clearly use." For a long, tense moment, Cade simply stared at her. Ivy refused to back down, even though her heart was threatening to beat out of her chest. Then, impossibly, he laughed. It transformed his face, softening the harsh lines, making him look younger and infinitely more approachable. Even his golden eyes seemed to warm. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever encountered. You haven't seen anything yet." He shook his head slowly, still smiling. "Very well, Miss Thornton. Equal partnership. Theodore's mother in truth as well as law. You have my word." He extended his hand. Ivy looked at it, then at him, at the powerful alpha who commanded hundreds, at the grieving brother who had searched 8 months for a lost sibling, at the lonely man whose eyes, when he looked at her, seemed to hold questions he didn't know how to ask. She took his hand. The moment their skin touched, lightning shot up her arm. She saw Cade feel it too, saw his jaw clench, his pupils dilate, his breath catch. He didn't pull away, but his grip tightened as if he couldn't help himself. "What is that?" Ivy whispered. "Every time we touch, I feel—" "Nothing." Cade released her hand abruptly, stepping back. "It's nothing. Excuse me." He was out the door before she could respond. Ilara made a soft sound from her chair. When Ivy turned, the old woman was smiling knowingly. "That boy," Ilara said, shaking her silver head. so determined to fight destiny, as if anyone ever wins that battle. "What do you mean? What is this thing between us?" Ilara's golden eyes met hers. "In time, child. You'll understand in time." She rose, still holding the sleeping Theo. "For now, rest, settle in. Let the truth reveal itself when both of you are ready to see it." She swept out of the study, leaving Ivy alone with her racing heart and 1,000 unanswered questions. That evening, Ivy couldn't sleep. She had put Theo to bed, read him his fairy tales, watched him drift off into peaceful dreams, but her own mind refused to quiet. "The mate bond," Mira had whispered earlier, passing her in the hallway. "That's what they're calling it. The thing between you and Cade. I've only seen it happen once before. It's rare and powerful. The mate bond." Ivy had done some research after that conversation, finding books in the mansion's extensive library. The mate bond, according to shifter law, was an unbreakable connection between destined partners. Once formed, it created a link between souls, a recognition so deep that fighting it caused physical pain. It explained the electricity when they touched, the pull she felt toward him, the way her heart raced whenever he entered a room. But it also explained why Cade kept pushing her away. An alpha bound to a human. It went against every tradition, every expectation. A sound drew her to the window. In the garden below, bathed in silver moonlight, a massive black wolf lay beside Theo's window, guarding, watching, protecting Cade. Ivy's heart clenched with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. She was still standing there when sleep finally claimed her, her forehead pressed against the cool glass, watching the wolf who watched over her son. The wolf whose golden eyes, she suspected, were watching her too. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of uneasy truce, of careful navigation, of two people trying desperately to ignore the gravity pulling them together. Ivy settled into life at the Mercer estate with surprising ease. She helped in the clinic that served the pack, putting her nursing skills to use. She learned the names of the people who lived there, their stories, their families. She even began to think of Hollow Creek as home. But every interaction with Cade was a study in restraint. He was unfailingly polite, scrupulously professional. He asked about Theo's development, about Ivy's comfort, about anything and everything except the thing that burned between them. And every night, without fail, the black wolf appeared beneath her window. "He's been different since you arrived," Soren told her one afternoon. They were walking through the grounds, Theo bouncing happily in the carrier on Ivy's chest. Lighter somehow, but also more intense. Like he's fighting something inside himself. The mate bond. Soren's steps faltered. "He told you?" His grandmother implied, "I read some books." Ivy smiled wryly. "I'm not completely clueless." "Then you know what it means, what you could mean to him, to all of us." "I know what the books say, but Cade seems determined to pretend it doesn't exist." Soren sighed. "He's been alone a long time. Even before his parents died, he was always apart from the pack. The weight of leadership, of responsibility, it isolates a person. I think he's afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of letting himself want something, of finally having something to lose." Ivy turned this over in her mind as they walked back toward the mansion. She understood fear. She understood loneliness. She had lived with both for so long that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to hope for more. And then Theo had come into her life. And then Cade. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the crowd gathering until Soren suddenly tensed beside her. "What is it?" Ivy asked, following his gaze. In the mansion's great hall, the entire pack seemed to have assembled. Cade stood at the front, his expression carved from stone, and beside him, one hand possessively on his arm, stood Dahlia Vance. "What's happening?" Ivy pushed through the crowd, Soren close behind her. "Ah, there she is!" Dahlia's voice rang out, sweet and poisonous. "The human nanny. Come to join us for the announcement." "Announcement?" Ivy looked at Cade, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. "Dahlia has proposed a formal alliance between her family and the Mercer Pack," Ilara explained, her voice carefully neutral. "A traditional arrangement." "Traditional?" Ivy's stomach dropped. "You mean marriage?" "The Vance family is one of the oldest in our territory," Dahlia purred. "An alliance would strengthen the pack, provide stability, produce heirs of pure blood." Her eyes flickered to Ivy with undisguised triumph. "Something a human could never offer." The hall went silent. Ivy felt as if all the air had been sucked from the room. She looked at Cade, at his clenched jaw, his averted eyes, his hands curled into fists at his sides. "Is this what you want?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer. "I see." Ivy's voice didn't waver, but something inside her cracked. "I see." She turned and walked out of the hall. She didn't run. She wouldn't give Dahlia the satisfaction. But with every step, she felt the mate bond stretch tight in her chest, pulling, pleading, begging her to turn around. She made it to her room before the tears came. She was packing when the door burst open. Cade stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, his golden eyes wild. "What are you doing? What does it look like?" Ivy shoved clothes into her suitcase with trembling hands. "You've made your choice. An alliance with the Vance family. Pure-blooded heirs. I understand. Theo and I will—" "I haven't made any choice." Cade crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing her arms and spinning her to face him. "She proposed. I haven't accepted." "Then why didn't you say anything? Why did you let her humiliate me in front of everyone?" "Because I'm trying to do the right thing." The words exploded from him. "My pack needs stability. The Blackmore are still out there, still a threat. An alliance with the Vance family would strengthen our defenses, secure our future. That's what a good alpha does. He puts his people first." "And what about what you want?" The question hung between them. Cade's hands tightened on her arms. His golden eyes burned into hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "What I want," he said slowly, each word rough and raw, "is something I can't have. Something that would put you in danger. Something that goes against everything I was raised to believe." He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "I want to fall asleep knowing you're safe. I want to wake up knowing you're still here. I want to watch you raise my brother and know that he has the best mother in the world." Ivy's heart hammered against her ribs. "Cade, every night I tell myself to stay away from you, to accept Dahlia's proposal, to do my duty." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Every night I end up beneath your window anyway, because the thought of being anywhere else is unbearable." "Then stop fighting," Ivy breathed. "Stop pretending this bond between us doesn't exist. If I stop fighting, I'll never be able to let you go." "What if I don't want you to let me go?" Time stopped. Cade stared at her, something cracking behind his careful mask. Hope, fear, desperate, overwhelming want. "You don't know what you're asking," he said hoarsely. "This world, my world, it's dangerous. You've seen what we are, what I am. I've also seen you with Theo. I've seen you with your pack, how they respect you, how they would follow you anywhere. I've seen you stand under my window every single night, protecting us even when you thought I didn't know. Ivy, I'm not asking for certainty." She reached up and touched his face, feeling him shudder beneath her palm. "I'm asking for a chance, for both of us to stop being afraid." For one endless moment, Cade remained frozen. Then, with a sound that was almost a growl, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It was everything and nothing like she had imagined. Heat and tenderness, desperation and reverence, the mate bond singing between them like a chord, finally struck after years of silence. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cade rested his forehead against hers. "I haven't accepted Dahlia's proposal," he said quietly. "I never intended to. I couldn't, not when every part of me belongs to you." "Then tell them." Ivy's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "Tell everyone. They'll resist. An alpha with a human mate. It's nearly unprecedented. Then we'll change the precedent." She smiled, fierce and bright. "Together." Cade pulled back to look at her, really look at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "You really aren't afraid of anything, are you?" "I'm terrified," Ivy admitted. "But I've learned that the things worth having are usually on the other side of fear." He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise rather than a question. Neither of them heard the footsteps retreating from the doorway. Neither of them saw Dahlia Vance slip into the shadows, her face contorted with rage. Neither of them knew that the danger was only beginning. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Ivy's life. Cade publicly rejected Dahlia's proposal, declaring before the entire pack that his heart had already made its choice. There were murmurs, of course, doubts, sidelong glances at the human woman who had somehow captured their alpha. But there was also acceptance, support. Ilara standing beside Ivy with quiet pride. Soren welcoming her like a sister. Mira squeezing her hand with tears of joy in her eyes. And Dahlia, notably, saying nothing at all, simply watching with cold, calculating eyes. "You should be careful around her," Mira warned one afternoon. They were in the garden, watching Theo crawl through the grass with determined concentration. "Dahlia's family is powerful. She doesn't accept rejection easily." "I'm not worried about Dahlia." "Maybe you should be." But Ivy couldn't bring herself to care about ancient rivalries and bruised egos. Not when Cade looked at her like she was the sun after years of darkness. Not when Theo said his first word, "Mama," and Cade's eyes filled with tears of joy. Not when, for the first time in her life, she felt like she truly belonged somewhere. She was learning to control her new reality. Cade taught her about pack dynamics, about the history of the shifters, about the delicate politics that governed their world. She accompanied him to council meetings, standing at his side, proving to the doubters that she was more than capable of standing beside an alpha. And at night, when the world fell quiet, they talked for hours about everything and nothing, their childhoods, their fears, their dreams. Cade told her about the night his parents died, the chaos, the blood, the desperate search for a brother who had vanished like smoke. Ivy told him about the foster homes, the loneliness, the way she had almost given up on ever having a family of her own. "And then I found Theo," she whispered one night, lying in his arms beneath a canopy of stars. "And then I found you." "You saved us both," Cade murmured against her hair. "You brought him home. You made me remember what it feels like to hope." We saved each other. The celebration of the autumn moon was approaching, the pack's most sacred holiday. It was, Ilara explained, the traditional time for alpha pairs to formally announce their bond. "Cade wants to declare you as his mate during the ceremony," the old woman told Ivy with a knowing smile. "Before the entire pack. It would make your position official, unquestionable." Ivy's heart raced at the thought. "Is that what you think I should do?" Ilara's golden eyes grew distant, seeing something beyond the visible world. "I think you were brought here for a reason, child. I think the universe rarely makes mistakes." She paused. "But I also think there are forces moving against you. Be vigilant in the days ahead." The warning stayed with Ivy, a shadow at the edge of her happiness. She should have paid closer attention. The night before the autumn moon celebration, Ivy woke to the smell of smoke. She shot upright, her heart pounding. Through the window, she could see flames licking at the eastern wing of the mansion. Shouts echoed through the halls. The wail of alarm bells pierced the night. "Theo!" She threw herself from the bed and raced to the nursery. Empty. The crib was empty. "No." The word came out as a whisper, then a scream. "No!" She tore through the mansion, shoving past the chaos of evacuation. People were running, shifting, the night alive with the howls of wolves and the crackle of flames. "Ivy!" Cade materialized from the smoke, his face smeared with soot. "Are you hurt?" "Theo's gone. Someone took him." Cade's entire body went rigid. "What?" "The nursery is empty. He's gone, Cade. Someone took our baby." For one terrible moment, the Alpha looked utterly lost. Then his expression hardened into something cold and deadly. "Soren!" His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Lock down! No one leaves the estate. I want every tracker we have searching the grounds." "Cade!" Soren appeared at his side, his face grim. "There's something you need to see." They followed him to the garden wall, where a stone had been turned over to reveal a hidden gap, a passageway that clearly led beyond the estate's boundaries. "It's old," Soren said, "from the original construction. Someone who knew about it. Dahlia." Ivy's voice was flat. "She's been part of this pack for years. She would know every secret passage." Cade's eyes blazed gold in the firelight. "Find her, now." But they were too late. Dahlia was gone. And so was Theo. The tracks led north, toward the territory that everyone feared to speak of, toward the mountains that marked the boundary of Blackmoor land. Cade turned to Ivy, his face a mask of barely controlled fury and despair. "Stay here. I'll bring him back." "No." Ivy stepped forward, grabbing his arm. "I'm coming with you." "It's too dangerous. He's my son." Her voice broke on the word. "Ours. I won't stay behind while someone else fights for him." Cade stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Then stay close to me. Whatever happens, stay close." They ran into the darkness together, following the trail of the woman who had betrayed them, praying they weren't already too late. The Blackmoor compound was a fortress of stone and shadows, perched on a mountainside like a predator waiting to strike. By the time Ivy and Cade reached its outer boundaries, dawn was breaking over the peaks, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. "There." Cade pointed to a narrow path that wound up the mountain. "There's an entrance the Blackmoor think is hidden. An old friend showed me years ago, before the alliance fell apart." Ivy didn't ask about the friend. She could see the old pain in Cade's eyes, and knew that some stories were too heavy for moments like this. They climbed in silence, the only sounds their labored breathing and the crunch of gravel beneath their feet. Ivy's muscles burned. Her lungs screamed. But every time she thought of Theo, of his laugh, his reaching hands, his perfect trust, she found the strength to keep going. The entrance was exactly where Cade said it would be. A gap in the rocks, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Beyond it lay a tunnel that smelled of damp stone and ancient secrets. "Once we're inside, stay behind me," Cade murmured. "If we're separated, find Theo and run. Don't look back." "Cade, promise me." His golden eyes burned into hers. "Promise me that no matter what happens, you'll save our son." Ivy's throat tightened. "I promise." They slipped through the gap and into the darkness. The tunnel wound through the mountain's heart, branching into corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Cade navigated with the confidence of someone who had memorized the layout long ago, pausing occasionally to listen, to scent the air, to track the faint traces left behind by those who had passed before them. Finally, they emerged into a vast underground chamber, and there, in the center of the room, was Dahlia. She stood before an altar of black stone, Theo cradled in her arms. Around her, a circle of Blackmoor wolves waited, their eyes gleaming in the torchlight. "I wondered how long it would take you to find us," Dahlia's voice echoed off the stone walls. "The mighty Alpha, reduced to chasing scraps through tunnels like a common dog." "Let him go." Cade's voice was steady, but Ivy could see the tension in every line of his body. "This is between you and me, Dahlia. The child is innocent." "Innocent?" Dahlia laughed, the sound harsh and brittle. "This child is the key to everything. The last Mercer heir, delivered directly into Blackmore hands. With him as leverage, your precious pack will fall in line. And you," her eyes flickered to Ivy, "you'll watch everything you love crumble." "Why?" Ivy stepped forward, unable to stay silent. "Why would you betray your own people?" "My people?" Dahlia's face contorted with rage. "The Mercers are not my people. They're the reason my family lost everything. My father was supposed to be Alpha before Cade's father stole the position. For generations we've waited for our chance to reclaim what was taken." She looked down at Theo with cold calculation. "This child will grow up Blackmore. He'll be raised to hate everything Mercer. And when he's old enough, he'll help us burn your legacy to ash." "That will never happen." Cade shifted his stance, preparing to attack. Ah. Dahlia held up a hand, and the Blackmore wolves tensed. "One more step, and I give the order. There are 20 wolves in this room, Cade. Even you can't fight them all." She was right. Ivy could see it in Cade's face, the horrible calculation, the impossible odds. He could fight. He would fight. But he couldn't win, not against these numbers. But maybe she could change those numbers. Ivy closed her eyes and reached for something deep inside herself, something that had been stirring since the moment she'd arrived at the Mercer estate. She thought of Theo's laugh, of Cade's arms around her, of the family she had waited her whole life to find. Protect them, she thought. Whatever I am, whatever power is inside me, protect the ones I love. And something answered. Light exploded from her hands. It wasn't like the fire that had consumed the mansion. This was different, softer, golden. It spread outward in a wave, and wherever it touched, the Blackmore wolves stumbled back, shielding their eyes, whimpering in confusion. "What?" Dahlia's eyes went wide with shock. "That's impossible. You're human. You can't—" "I'm Theodore's mother." Ivy's voice resonated with a power she didn't fully understand. "I'm Cade's mate, and I am telling you, let go of my son." The light intensified. Dahlia screamed, dropping Theo as the golden glow burned her arms. Cade moved faster than thought, catching his brother before he hit the ground. In the same motion, he placed Theo in Ivy's arms. "Run!" he commanded. "I'll hold them off." "Cade, go!" Ivy ran. She ran through the tunnels with Theo clutched to her chest, the golden light still flickering around her like a protective shield. Behind her, she heard the sounds of combat, snarls and howls, and the clash of bodies. She wanted to turn back, to help, to stand beside the man she loved, but she had made a promise. The tunnel exit loomed ahead. Dawn light poured through, blinding after the darkness. Ivy burst into the open air and kept running, down the mountain, toward safety, toward home. She was halfway to the tree line when she heard it. A howl, long and mournful and full of pain. Cade. Ivy stopped. Every instinct screamed at her to keep running, to protect Theo, to honor her promise. But she couldn't leave him. She wouldn't. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered to Theo, tears streaming down her face. "Mama has to go back." She tucked Theo into a hollow at the base of a massive oak, hidden, protected, surrounded by her fading golden light like a shield. Then she turned and ran back into the darkness. Cade was surrounded. He had taken down 6 Blackmore wolves, but more kept coming. His flanks were bleeding from a dozen wounds. His legs trembled with exhaustion. But still he fought, because the alternative was unthinkable. He had heard Ivy escape. He had felt the moment she cleared the tunnels through their bond, a brief surge of relief amidst the chaos. His mate was safe. His brother was safe. That was all that mattered, even if it meant he wouldn't survive to see them again. A massive wolf, the Blackmore Alpha, circled closer, murder in his eyes. "This is the end, Mercer. Your bloodline dies here. Cade bared his teeth, shifting fully into his wolf form for what he knew might be the last time. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. The Blackmoor Alpha lunged, and then the world turned to gold. Light exploded through the chamber, so bright that even Cade was momentarily blinded. When his vision cleared, he saw her. Ivy. She stood at the chamber's entrance, her entire body radiating that impossible golden glow. But she was different now, stronger, steadier. Her eyes blazed with an ancient power that Cade had only read about in the oldest texts, the Guardian's gift. "Get away from him," Ivy said, her voice resonating with layers of power that made the stone walls tremble. The Blackmoor Alpha laughed nervously. "You think a little light show will—" Ivy raised her hand, and the light condensed into a barrier between Cade and his attackers. The Blackmoor wolves threw themselves against it, clawing and biting, but it held firm. "I said get away from him!" The light intensified. The Blackmoor wolves whimpered, retreating despite their alpha's snarled commands. Dahlia appeared from the shadows, her face twisted with fury. "You can't protect him forever, human. Sooner or later your power will fade, and when it does, Ivy interrupted calmly, you'll still have to face me, and him, and everyone who loves us." She stepped closer to Cade, her hand finding his fur, grounding them both. "You think you can break us? You have no idea what we're capable of together." The moment their bond completed, the moment she fully claimed him and he fully claimed her, Cade felt it like a second heartbeat. Her strength flowed into him. His power flowed into her. They were two halves of something greater, something that had been waiting millennia to be reunited. The Blackmoor Alpha must have felt it too, because for the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. "This isn't over," he growled. "The Blackmoor never forget. Then remember this." Cade shifted back to human form, standing tall despite his wounds. "The Mercer Pack protects its own. Come for my family again, and there won't be a mountain deep enough to hide you." The Blackmoor retreated, melting into the shadows of the tunnels. Dahlia lingered a moment longer, her eyes promising revenge, before following her new allies into the darkness. When they were finally alone, Ivy's power flickered and faded. She swayed, exhausted, and Cade caught her in his arms. "You came back," he whispered against her hair. "I told you to run." "I know," she smiled weakly. "I'm not very good at following orders." He laughed, a broken, relieved sound, and kissed her forehead. "Never change." "Cade. Theo. I left him in the forest. We need to—" "Soren found him." Cade pressed his forehead to hers. "The pack arrived just after you came back for me. Theo is safe. Everyone is safe." The tears came then, tears of relief, of exhaustion, of overwhelming love. Ivy clung to Cade as sobs shook her body, and he held her through all of it, his own eyes glistening. They had survived. They had won. And somewhere, in a hollow at the base of an oak tree, their son was waiting to welcome them home. The autumn moon celebration was postponed by 3 days. 3 days for the pack to recover. 3 days for the wounded to heal. 3 days for Ivy to learn the full truth about what she was. The Guardians were an ancient lineage, Ilara explained, holding Ivy's hands in her weathered grasp. Human women blessed with protective powers designed to complement the strength of alpha wolves. They were rare even in the old days. We thought the bloodline had died out centuries ago. But how? I'm nobody special. I grew up in foster homes. I don't even know who my parents were. Perhaps that's exactly why you were chosen. Ilara smiled mysteriously. The universe has a way of putting the right people exactly where they need to be. Ivy thought about that for a long time. About the chance that had brought her to Theo's hospital. About the impulse that had made her move to Hollow Creek. About the impossible, beautiful path that had led her to this moment.